Thanks for joining us for another episode of Already Won, a Sports Friends podcast. Each week, Coach Ben and Coach Kyle share their insights, interview special guests, and offer some extra words of wisdom. The victory is ours, because we've already won.
Hello and welcome to the Already Won podcast, a Sports Friends production. I'm your host, as always, the Wildcat, and I'm here with Mad Dog.
I think I am still mad.
Still mad, but still saving the victory because you have already won, Kyle. And don't forget, guys, tell your friends. What do we tell them, Kyle?
I think we're going to stick with that they've already won.
It is Series 2, and we are still sticking with that. We already won because, guys, God's given us a victory. So whatever you do, do not quit. And this podcast is all around as you, as a Christian, can use this tool of sports to be able to share the gospel, whether you're a player, a coach, or a fan. Each week, we are going to bring you different guests. So as you know, in Series 2, we're going for a tool and a topic. A topic and a tool. What is our topic this week, Mad Dog?
I'm going to go on a limb and say role model?
That being a role model.
Being a role model.
Being a role model.
Ding,
and
ding, 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 ding. Let's go.
First of all, Mad Dog, you in your life, what does that look like, this thing about role modeling?
Are you saying that I'm a role model for people? Thank you.
Yeah, for me.
I appreciate
for me and for many.
Yeah, I mean, being a role model is in each individual's life, you have certain people that kind of, impact you, or you kind of want to be like them or something. I think for myself, if you're asking me who my role models are, which I think you're asking me who my role models are, I may have two, at this point in life. It could change. Next year could be one, could be three, could be 365. One day, every day a week, I'll choose a role model. But I'm going to go, with spiritually, I've been reading, the message a little bit more and finding a little bit more about Eugene Peterson's life and how he kind of transformed scripture for so many. I mean, you hear so many people say when they read the message, if he wouldn't have done that, wouldn't have taken that risk to anytime you tamper with scriptures, people go, bing, bing, stop, you can't do that, but it's a great, for me, spiritual Eugene Peterson. Sports, maybe I'll say I'm kind of fascinated with Coach Tony Dungy, former Super Bowl coach. Now he's an analyst. He's on the news, but he's got a great faith background. Continues to show his faith. He's had a tragedy in his past, but yeah, I think I'm going to stick with those two role models. What about you, Coach Wildcat?
I tell you, so many different good things that you said there about looking at someone who's slightly in front of you, who maybe has knowledge that you don't have. For me, I agree with what you said there. There's often one within sport, but maybe within my Christian walk as well. Like we're separating these things out a little bit, aren't we? Around different role models. So yeah, I think it's also in scripture as well, right? This idea of, like Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. I thought you were going to say Jesus. That's always the answer, right? But he is the ultimate role model. Too easy, exactly. But this whole thing about like imitate, me as I imitate Christ. It's one big kind of ongoing thing of role modeling, right? And I think for all of us within our world and our different spheres that we're in, having someone who's slightly just that little bit ahead of you is really important. And that's, of course, with us within Sports Friends, we trained coaches that are part of church-centered sports ministries, which are basically just slightly ahead of young people, right? So they're role models to young people. And we love sharing stories around that. But this week on the podcast, we have Andrew Martin coming in, who is the Director of Development for KiCK UK. Now, he's going to come in and talk about role model. Now, he has done many different things. He's been a secondary school teacher for nearly 20 years. He's been an England rugby coach educator. He's also been an England rugby regional selector. So he's had loads of different experience with that. And he's trained and helps train over 100 staff that he's now got who are now role models in the education sphere. So we're going to hear from him around this topic, around education. And he's going to give us a little few tools and tips along the way as well. So without further ado, let's welcome Andrew Martin to the Already Won podcast. Welcome, Andrew. Come on in.
Hi, both.
Welcome.
Mate. How you doing?
Yeah, really good. Good to be with you.
Fantastic to have you on. We're going to start as we always do. Our first question. We're called Already Won. We've got a new background. It's blue. But what does that phrase, already won, mean to you?
Right. So, I've enjoyed watching some of the podcasts so far and some of the, great answers. So I thought, well, how could sort of give a slightly different angle. And I think for me, I think it gives us a confidence and an assurance and an authority when we seek to, work with others, bless each other, bless others, coach others, or share the gospel with them, which is ultimately what we're looking to do. It gives us that confidence that actually we are building something that's on firm footing, on the rock, and that actually we can go with confidence that God will make our path straight and he will anoint the work of our hands, and that there's no reason to apologize or be nervous because we are already part of the winning team as we seek to do it.
I think that's exactly where we're trying to head towards is having that assurance of this victory. I think that's great. I appreciate your sharing that, but there's something about already having victories, and there's something behind you there that doesn't mesh with that. This Miami thing. I'm not sure you are dialing in from Miami, or have a fantasy that one day Miami will be in the Super Bowl again. I don't know.
Well, it's either that or the golf trophies that are the level above. That was a bit too showy, so okay. I just put a bit of sporting memorabilia to break up the all the awards.
Maybe the golf trophies will come closer. We'll just kind of talk about those more than that. But no, it's great. So we, if you've watched any of our previous podcasts, Ben typically promotes you to like director, president, owner, even sometimes of your organization. So I don't want to muddle that up, but can you describe your current role with KiCK and even what KiCK is all about?
Yeah, great. So KiCK, we are an organization. We're 100 strong, and I'm part of the executive team. I'm one of the directors here, so I'm in charge of growing KiCK, essentially, so director of development, along with Johnny and Chris and Joe, our CEO. We're in 115 schools across the country, working with between 35 and 40 churches. You might have seen KiCK at a lot of the major Christian festivals throughout the summer and the year, and growing quite quickly, and it's an exciting organisation to be part of.
Great. Let's dive into that a little bit more. We on this series 2, we're talking about the greater game. So, we love sport, but we believe there's a greater game going on around sports ministry, right? So can you just share a little bit around those coaches that you have, what they do in different places, and how they're part of this greater game? What does that look like for KiCK as an organization?
We essentially go to schools. The guys that I mentioned on the exec team, we've all been school leaders previously, so we will pitch our services to schools, and then we will send these staff into them. So we have these Christian staff who love Jesus and love young people and want to make a difference in these young people's lives. And we offer 4 professional services to these schools: PE teachers, mentors, street dance coaches, and also lay chaplains. And through this work, what we want to do is send Christian role models into school to be Jesus in those places. Through all of the sessions that we lead, we lace it with Galatians 5, the fruits of the Spirit. And also what we seek to do is then, whilst we're into the school, can we begin to start Christian unions? We offer to lead assemblies. We have more scope there to share the gospel than people often realise. And then we do a lot of work to connect the school with the local church in a variety of ways. So exciting thing to be doing. Our coaches are young, energetic, full of energy, full of the Holy Spirit, and making terrific impacts in the lives of these young people.
Love it. And you were 20 years nearly in a school, secondary school as PE teacher. So describe, your experience and then what these coaches are like. What does that look like to be part of the greater game? So you're in there, you're doing like after school programs, you're doing all those different things, lunch club, all this kind of stuff, assemblies. What does that look like then for coaches? How do they effectively and sensitively kind of share their faith in that environment?
So I did 20 years in education, 10 of them as a PE teacher, and then 10 of them as a school leader, as I refer to. And I think we all know deep down, whether we love sport or not, that it's a good place to be able to build relationships. They're not stuck behind, people are not stuck behind desks when you're playing sport. There's a sense of freedom. You're outdoors. They can let off steam. All those sorts of things that allow for those relationships to be built with coaches that might not always be able to take place in a classroom setting where things are maybe a bit rigid. And I found certainly those 10 years as a PE teacher, it was really, really fruitful time to be able to role model to them Christian values in just the way I acted and treated them and conducted myself as a PE teacher, or all those obvious examples you can have to actually share the gospel, be it through running Christian unions. For many years, I took the Christian Union away for weekends and all sorts of things. And, inviting people to come in and do talks at assemblies to share their faith. So just be able to, role models to these young people. We know that there is a huge issue in this country with young people not having male role models at home. And we know that is a gap that sadly gets filled with, the wrong sort of role model. So I think as Christian men, be it as a PE teacher or just, any sort of profession, we've got a real responsibility to be role models for these young people.
Let's continue on that around role models, because that's so important for good role models. I've just looked at the website. If anyone wants to go to it, it's kick.org.uk. I see you working in primary schools, you're working in secondary schools, you reach over 27,500 young people, right? Loads of schools. In 2022, it was 104. I can imagine that's even more. And you're working, you're mentoring different young people. Tell us around the importance then of a KiCK coach. Why is it important for them to be role models? What's the significance about that when they go into the schools?
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially, we know, don't we, that as Christians, we carry the Holy Spirit with us. And we're able to see things through God's eyes. We're able to sense things that God would want to put on our heart, that we can speak in situations that the world would understand. And we also know that, as I mentioned, there is a real lack of positive role models for young people. So where there's that gap, that gets filled with negative ones. And unfortunately, as an assistant head, the hardest moments I had were not explaining about Ofsted or explaining about exam results. It was maybe uncovering or realizing that a young person's home life was really, really, not pleasant, and the role models were very negative. And that was really, really hard. And that's why teachers can sometimes, it's so hard not to get emotionally involved and try and keep those professional lines. And so I think that we know that young people are very vulnerable. We know that they're impressionable, and we want to be, we want to impact as many young people as we can. We want to actually reach a generation of people, with children within a generation of time. So by being in these schools, not only are we taking the Holy Spirit with us, are we able to speak into situations, but also our KiCK coaches typically won't deliver GCSE or A-level lessons. They won't typically have to do parents' evenings and have some of the sort of extra stresses around what a sort of a more typical teacher would have to deal with. Therefore, there is a capacity, both physically, emotionally, all sorts, to maybe have that, bit left over to just love that child a bit longer than when some of the other teachers have completely lost the will to live with them. There might be that bit more capacity to continue to work with them, when actually some of the teachers might have sort of thought, no, that's it. You've pushed me beyond anything I could do for you now. So it's about consistency. It's about loving them, and it's about praying for the children all the time. We actually use the phrase in KiCK, ACE2. This stands for A, we're aspirational for the young person. C is to be compassionate, like Jesus was to children. E is for excellence, because we know that the staff know that we're Christians, even if we don't always get the chance to relate to the children. So if we're not going to be excellent, that's a bad testimony straight away. We want to be intentional and also work with integrity. So ACE2 is something which fills all of our space. And we believe that living that out in the workplace is a good testimony to all the stakeholders involved with the church community, and in this conversation, the school community.
Love that. Well, let's think about you personally then. I know you've had a load of different experience within the world of sport, and I know you've got an American football hat behind you, but predominantly you've played a sport without pads, right? Which, tell us a little bit about that, around your coaching experience, a bit about your playing background, and just tell Carl about that sport where there's no pads.
Is that flag football? Is that what you're playing? We had one guy already talk about that.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, I'm in my garden office. It's really nice. My brother's a builder and built it for me last year. And I've got Boston Celtics here. I've got Tottenham over there. I've got Harlequins and Saracens over there. I'm not quite sure whether maybe Dolphins is there, but I am old enough to remember Dan Marino. And that was it. I was hooked. But as a professional, my sort of first sport was rugby. I worked for England Rugby for some time in a professional capacity as a coach. And I've coached county teams, district teams, national teams, and all sorts, and been involved with a lot of things in that along the way. Played to a national level standard until 21, when I injured a vertebrae in my back, and pretty quickly picked up the coaching reins. And so I had great times doing that. Lots of stories. Some of them wouldn't be suitable for an already one podcast. Some of them very suitable, and everything in between. So it's a great game. And so started off obviously coaching at school, and then working my way up 11, 12, 13 years or so. It took work for England Rugby in a professional capacity as a coach, educator, and developer. So going up and down the country, taking coaches through further qualifications, mentoring current professional coaches to become better, and then working with county and representative teams as well. So great joy.
Kyle, as an American, any questions around the sport of rugby before we dive into some more specifics on that? Or
yeah, I've seen it being played, and I'll just equate it with psychotic. So I think that's what we'll just leave it at that. No, I do. I think once they put the helmets on here, they lead with the helmet. I mean, at least with you guys, you're moving the whole body around, and rugby's a little bit more classy, I guess. Whereas we're just on a death wish sometimes. So, well, you guys, I'm slowly warming up to the rugby phenomenon. Well, I guess it was around before American football. So
there we go. Well, Andy, you've done loads of experience with coaches, right? And it sounds like you've been a role model for those professional coaches, and you've been coaching the coaches, and you've had loads of experience in different things as well. I know you've been for Kent County Rugby, you've been a board member as well. So tell us around the importance of being a Christian in that world and being a role model for those other coaches. How do you do that? I mean, you mentioned that the H2 stuff there, which is great. What does that look like for you to practically live that out in that environment?
Essentially, we want Christians in as many walks of life as possible. If we all just kept within the realms of the church and church work and only dealt with Christians, obviously we're not going to be fulfilling the great commandment. And God has given us unique talents. He's made us perfectly, in His image, and I think it's really important that we lean into that, and God will use us, and He's going to take us into spaces where He will use what He's given us naturally, but also then just multiply that by His Holy Spirit. And I mean, I remember my first sort of foray into working with England on a professional level. As I said, my career was average, really. National League, not Premiership. Finished by sort of even before finished university because of back injury, and first sort of educational sort of certificate that we put a group through. It was me, 2 other coaches, and both of them were recently retired Premiership rugby players. So would have been 2 to 3 years earlier, would have been on the TV screen on a Saturday afternoon, and I was the third one and felt really quite out of my depth. And prayed about it and wondered if that was an early warning from God that you've sort of gone a bit too far here, Andrew. I know I'll give you some gifts with this, but not really that many. Who do you think you are? And it was a three days, really intense, examining them, observing them, filming them. And then they do written exams at the end of it. They compile all sorts of evidence-based learning. And an external person comes in. He actually flew in from Italy, where he lives, all paid for by the RFU, and and I still give the glory to the Lord that all 16 of my candidates passed, and in both the other groups, 2 failed from each group, and I don't think for 1 minute that's because I was actually a better coach than them, but I think there's just an acceptance that there was a sense of weakness in me to be able to meet that need. And I really opened up to the Lord and said, if you want me to be here and continue to be here, I need you to really help me with this one. And yeah, that was obviously good for me. It made a point within the team that I was able to deliver. And it just reminded me that the Lord's given me a certain amount of skill and a certain amount of ability, but I'm still reliant on Him. There'll always be someone better, someone bigger, someone stronger, whatever it might be. And in this case, these 2 people were people that were in World Rugby magazines, on TV. One had Caps for England, and there's me. And by the end of the weekend, the Lord had worked, and in my weakness, He was strong, and that was a little testimony to me that actually, if you do take a step into arenas that seem daunting, that the Lord will still more than look after you and provide for you. And that's something I felt all the way through. I don't think we should be reckless as believers to go into spaces where we're not called or we're not equipped, but actually the Lord will very much top up and make our path straighter, so that we can still do things for Him. And obviously within that, when you're spending 3 full days with guys that are mentally and physically being pushed quite hard, there is no way to hide things like your Christian faith. You know, what you do at weekends, tell me about yourself. There wasn't a single person by the end of 3 days that didn't know that, you know, I went to church on Sunday. Straight away, if half of my candidates would have failed, that doesn't make me a great witness. So I think there's all sorts of things. Reliance on God, pressing into what he's really called you to, and then have a confidence that if he's called you to it, he will help you through.
You know, these are important things to reflect on, because as now you keep advancing in age, as I have. You keep growing in what you've experienced, but then you also remember those things in the past that you continue to mold you and shape you as who you are today. And we know that coaches and teachers, for that matter, you've served in both roles, play important lives in young people and how they involve themselves with some of their decisions, and not just on the field but off the field as well. So as you look back to some of your playing days, you could even say school days, who was your best coach, and maybe why?
There's actually two answers to this. Firstly, and the most important one, and I hope he never watches this, because, you know, our group of mates would take the mickey at me forever. But my first sort of youth leader at a church, who was the football captain and invited me into the fold. I was honoured to be able to come and start training with the men when I was sort of 14, 15. I was quite big for my age. And all the way through to my 20s, you know, Steve was the football manager and football coach. He was also a 6'7" right police officer who was, you know, a big, strong man who was a great role model for me, you know, as not having a father or any Christian male role models, a big part in my life. And that's somebody who, you know, for my formative years, or those impressionable years, was sort of living out what it was to have an exciting career, running a football team. So that was sort of the biggest influence I had on me as a person. And then I was also very fortunate when working for England Rugby that Brian Ashton, who was the England coach for a long time, and most people consider him to be like the brightest brain within the game in this country for a generation. He got relieved of his duties because performances weren't good enough, and then got deployed onto working with us as coach educators. So I was able to sit at the feet of Brian Ashton for many sessions. One of the most innovative, out-of-the-box thinkers in the world of rugby. He was 60 if he was a day. Used to wear white socks with sandals, really scruffy hair, big pot belly. But my goodness, it was like the Yoda of rugby. And, you know, he was sort of, I'm sat there in groups of 6 or 8, throwing questions at him, and just soaking up loads and loads of information. And this is a guy that basically said that, you know, if you the underlying theory with Brian was that, you know, if you have the talent, you need to bring it and show it. If it goes wrong, I won't tell you off, because if you're never going to show it, you know, you're never going to develop to the best you are. So it was never safety first. It was quite the opposite. And it was just gave the players a sense of freedom, as us as coaches a sense of freedom, to let young people just loose to enjoy themselves. It was fantastic. So, yeah. So role modelling and coach for life, and then for actual sporting, you know, can be sort of two people, and it was for me.
That's good to know. Like, we always train our coaches like to be a sports minister. So you talk in there around sports, so having the knowledge around sport, like Brian. But then you've also got the minister side, the ministry, where it's more than just a coach. And from hearing about KiCK, you're training loads of your guys, right, 100 strong, to be that, you know, more than a coach. But can you give us any advice that you've heard in coaching wise? I mean, you've just talked about Brian. Maybe there was a bit of a golden nugget there from Brian that you could share with us, or from somewhere else, you know, maybe the youth worker or somewhere else. Give us a little bit of coaching advice that you kind of pass on to your KiCK staff, and then we could pass on to our sports friend staff who are listening.
Golden nuggets. Here we go.
Yeah, I very much can. I think that, and it's a lesson for our Christian walk as well as our sort of sporting, you know, career or coaching career. And I think that you never really know what you say, what you know, what impact it might have on a young person. So you might see a young person seems quite troubled while you're coaching them, and you just share a gentle encouragement because you think that's just a perfectly normal thing to do. And then you find out months, maybe years later, that can be absolutely transformative. And, you know, the reason I sort of paused when you first said it was because it's really pressing for me. You know, having come out of teaching for 20 years was a big decision. I'd already started this qualification to become a head teacher, and COVID sort of stopped me and caused me to pause. And those that are left teaching really leave about a sense of guilt, if I'm honest. And there is sometimes that, should I still be there? And my oldest Luke is 15 now, so he has to get his hair cut properly by a fashionable barber so he can look like Ben rather than me and Kyle. And he was having his hair cut about a week ago. I think it was last Saturday. And the young lad was asking him, what do you do? What school do you go to? And anyway, the conversation transpired. This lad's in his late 20s. Eventually, they put two and two together, and he was my scrum half at school for 6 years. And he was a great lad. I loved him. He was brilliant. Really liked the family. He had a sort of wobbly time when he started, and I pulled him into the rugby team. I could see that he wasn't. He was just starting to get a bit of mischief. He wasn't really buying into the football team. So come to me. I need, you just scoop people up, and then when they're with you, you can begin to work with them, mold them, and didn't really take too much notice of it. And, fast forward probably 15, 16 years later, and he sat in the chair and basically, said some very, very, very special things to my son about the effect I'd had in his life, which sounds very profound. And when Luke told me, I was like, really? And you think, God, why did the Lord wait nearly 2 decades to tell me that? And I just think that you will never really know the impact you're having. Coaching is the tool that you use to, be Jesus to these young people. And it's great. I've had young people go on and represent England in cricket, rugby, and women's rugby. And I'm in touch with all three, and I've got some mementos from them, and it's very nice. But I wouldn't swap it for some of the transformational work that I either know has happened or I pray did happen. And that's just really exciting. You never really know what impact you're having. So just keep loving them, believing in them, and being Jesus to them. And he will do the rest.
So good. So good. That's deeply encouraging to hear that. And I'm sure there's more stories that you've probably never heard of, the impact you've had on many young people and players. So great. I mean, that's encouraging for all our coaches and your coaches to hear about that. Let's think a little bit more about that specific then. You talked about the power of gentle encouragement. You mentioned Brian asking good questions. Have you got any other tips and tools that you kind of train your KiCK staff in? So like practical things like, I said about asking good questions. Is there anything else you can think around that would encourage those who are trying to aspire to be those sports ministers, to be more than just coaches? Have you got anything that you can pass on practically that can help people as a practical tool?
I think just the more you do something, the better you get at it. When I was assessing coaches, they would, to do these sort of exams they had to pass, they'd have reams and reams of notes, and they didn't dare part from it. That same coach 5 years down the line is going to be able to do it without thinking. You can just adapt. And I think the more you do something, the better you get at it. It's obviously, that's a rule for life in general, isn't it? But sports coaching particularly, you can be as prepared as you could possibly be, and you get a curveball the very first minute of the session. Double the amount of children turn up, or some of the children were really, really challenging. You just weren't expecting it. I just think the more you practice, the more experience you get, the more you observe other people, the more you try things out, the more accomplished you'll be as a coach, the more well-rounded you'll be as a coach. And then crucially, you'll then have that ability to just stand back in a session while the learning's going on, and then spot opportunities to go in and have those one-to-one conversations. At KiCK, we train churches to run sports academies for young people. So we have lots of churches up and down the country that run football clubs to use it as a vehicle to share the gospel. And one of the things we train the churches to do is have somebody that's very good at sideline ministry. Because whilst you've got the whistle and you're running around and maybe reading from a script to what coaching things to do next, you're not going to see the young person just drifted to the side and looks like they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders. Or you might not spot the parent that's just turned up on their own that looks really, upset about something they might have just been dealing with at home. So the opportunity to do that sideline ministry is very hard for a coach on their own, but actually we normally are on our own. Within school, it was regularly 30, 32 children. So the more experienced you are, the more capable you are, the more observations you do of others and getting feedback for your own work, the better you get, the more you can stand back and just be able to then just sort of scan the horizon and really sense what the Lord's sending you to do. If you're working too hard, you miss those opportunities. And ultimately, that only comes through experience. So do it. Practice. Observe people. You know, I spend a lot of time reading books on coaching. Sounds a bit geeky, I know, but, you know, particularly within rugby, books like Total Rugby that are even older than you are, Ben. It was, you know, reading theories and ideas, different approaches. And then when I was starting off my refereeing qualifications, I used to invite somebody I knew that was qualified ref to come and watch, give me feedback at the end of the session. And then over the years, you can and also be doing that as well as coaching. There is no substitute for experience and doing it. And even if you're not excellent, just being comfortable in a situation gives you that freedom capacity to then speak to these young people's lives.
Really good practical stuff there. I mean, that advice around just getting on, I'd say get on the grass, you know, like make sure, get the experience as much as you can. The more you do that, like you say, the more your confidence grows. And I love that about stepping back and not just like you can get drawn into the session of where the cones are going to go, what you're going to do next, what's your progression, but just the ability to step back and see what's going on, especially as a sports minister. Kind of seeing where God's at work, where are those moments that you can go in and give that gentle encouragement, like you said, or, you know, have those moments in the margins, like you said. I think that's really, really good advice for, you know, anyone who's listening as a coach there. So thank you so much for that. Last little bit, if you're watching via video, you can find out where you can go and visit KiCK. So Andrew mentioned their academies. He mentioned what they're doing. Andrew, tell us maybe one little story and how people can get involved within KiCK to finish us off and leave us, with some last bit of wisdom to finish off with.
Keep throwing these golden nuggets at him, and he's going to be, you know, we're going to change this show to the Golden Nugget Hour. That's
series 3. It's going to go gold in the background.
So, yeah, there's two things essentially that we do. You know, we want to be able to get Christians into schools. As I say, we have around 100 staff that are going into around 115 or so schools. So we want to be able to, you know, be introduced to more schools. So if you feel like you want a Christian member of staff that's doing mentoring or chaplaincy or PE or dance into your local school, get in touch with us, because we will then work with you to hopefully get a Christian in there and being light in the darkness. And then also what we want to do is, if you're a church and you're interested in providing some sort of sporting, you know, platform or opportunity for your young people, we know that there's a clash between, you know, playing on a Sunday morning and wanting to go to church. We know also there's a lot of young people that maybe haven't found a team or maybe been able to be selected for a team. There's a lot of young people out there that would go to a sports club or a KiCK academy that might not go to a church. So KiCK Academy is a great bridge to be able to invite children to. We train church volunteers to be able to run a sports session effectively. We also teach them how to embed the gospel, and then we provide them with all the resources they need, be it equipment to start with, and run the sessions. All the session coaching plans are all done for you, and then we then walk with you and mentor you along the way in order you can do that effectively. So if you want to introduce us to a school, get in touch with me. I think my email might be on here. No, if not, the office email, and I'll pick that up. And if you're a church and you want to see your young people doing more sport, but crucially using it as a vehicle to share the gospel in an innovative way, also do get in touch. We'd love to help you.
For those who are listening and not watching, that's your problem. But hey, anyways, kick.org.uk. That's kick.org.uk. And if you want to shoot them an email, it's office@kick.org.uk.
Fantastic. Mad Dog, are you inspired to take the pads off or not after speaking about rugby?
Yeah, I think if I would have taken the pads off earlier, I wouldn't be here right now. So I'm keeping the pads on. Sorry.
Yeah, but I'm sure you would have inspired some people, Andrew. Thank you just for your wisdom. I loved how you're someone who doesn't want to keep, you know, the good news of Jesus inside the walls of the church. You've spoken about there how you want a Christian in on boards, you want to train coaches, you want to be in schools where 95% of young people don't know the Lord Jesus. So I think that heart behind what you're sharing is fantastic, and we wish you all the best and bless you as you continue this ministry and all of those 100 staff and those other people you've all mentioned as well. And just remember that you've already won. Pads or no pads, you've already won.
Thanks, guys. Been a pleasure.
Good stuff. You keep trying to expose me more to this rugby something. Then I mean, there could be a chance. There might be a chance I may someday on a Saturday morning, because it's not going to be in the afternoon here. It'll be like midnight here. I'll be watching rugby and I'll call you and I'll say, I have no idea what these guys did. I thought there was 11 guys. No, there's 15. Oh no, that's union. That's league. I got a lot to learn. And I think we're going to do that in this podcast.
Sounds like you're there. Sounds like you're there. To be honest, like this podcast has helped me. I'm now a baseball fan, thanks to Coach Steve Check, and now you are a rugby fan, right? So on the way.
Cricket, I'm over here. I'm way over here, people. Out to the far reaches.
Boundary.
Figure that one out. Don't bring any cricket players yet. Don't try to confuse me. One sport at a time. Rugby, I'm warming up to.
We're sports friends, Carl. We're sports friends, so we have to expose people to different sports, right?
We know who's not going to be in the Super Bowl this year.
Miami Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins. That'll please some people in Charlotte.
Carolina. They have got better though. They had a much better record.
They had a great season. I was actually surprised they didn't get to the Super Bowl, but
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Panthers v Dolphins final. You heard it here.
I don't think so. But anyways, thanks for the hope.
Regardless of that, look, we enjoy that episode around being a role model. Carl, what was the kind of things you kind of got from that little bit around what Andrew shared?
Yeah, I think, similar to what we do in Sports Friends, you're kind of, a lot of our coaches have either played, whether professionally or they've played locally, or they just thought they could go professional, but then they realize their life is probably going to have more of an impact as a coach, as a role model, something that they can do in the lives of the youth. So I think that's something that I really took away from what Andrew was speaking on, that, he's had a sort of a packed history, but now he's moved into this next phase of his life of training coaches who then impact the lives of others.
For sure. He's definitely mentoring, being a role model to the next generation of coaches who are being role models to the young people. So it's that whole thing, imitating those that pass it on, etc. So really good to hear that. And, we always finish with a little bit of a link to our Sports Friends coaches. Now, we've mentioned that we train our coaches with 4 trainer values: to live to worship Christ, to lead to serve the church, to minister to make disciples, and coach to develop skills. Isn't that right, Mad Dog? Live, lead, minister, coach. There we go. And so what we haven't got a video for you, but what we have got is a playlist on our YouTube channel. People can go to our playlist. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can go on and there's a section called Meet the Coach.
Wait. To get to the YouTube channel, listeners, it's Sports Friends INTL. All one word. You'll get there quickly. But if you type in sports space friends space INTL, you'll get there too. But go Sports Friends INTL.
There we go. And you'll find that playlist, Meet the Coach. And there'll be loads of coaches who are role models to many young people from all different continents, different countries, and you can watch them. The reason why we're not showing a video is because a lot of them speak in their native language. So it's something that they, not always in English. So it probably wouldn't work best on an Audible podcast, right? So definitely worth going on a YouTube channel, clicking that notification bell, clicking that subscribe, and giving a thumbs up, right, Mad Dog? That's what we want.
Thumbs up. Smash it. I heard people say. The kids are saying, smash that button.
That's what they're saying. And I hope they're saying and telling their friends that they already won. Isn't that right?
No. You just tell your friends. Tell your friends. Tell your parents even. Tell your parents, friends. Again, just tell everyone we've already won.
There we go. Thank you, Mad Dog. Thank you so much. Keep being role models to the next generation, people. And we'll see you for the next episode very soon.
Thanks again for joining us on Already Won, a Sports Friends podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform.